You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to episode 89 of A Life in Ruins podcast, where we investigate the careers of those living a life in ruins. I'm your host, Carlton Gover, and I am joined by my co-host, David Howe. Connor's not with us today. He's on his way to the Sunshine State to, I don't know. I have nothing wit. I didn't prepare for that, David.
Is Arizona the Sunshine State, or is it
I think so.
The Gun State? I can't remember.
Either or. Well, anyways, today we are joined by two guests. We have Zach Rice and Taylor Moore for a special 4-segment episode. Zach and Taylor are the directors for the Pawnee Language Program back in Pawnee, Oklahoma. Very excited to have them on tonight. How are the two of you guys doing?
Great. We're great. We're honored to be on your podcast.
Yeah.
We're glad to have you guys. Yeah, this is I think you're the first linguist we've talked to, which is something we really need to have on the show more.
Yeah, I don't know of any. Yeah, you guys are the first linguistic anthropologists we've had on. I mean, I just don't know that many in general. Well, I know like a couple guys from Indiana, but other than that, just not something archaeologists are usually around, even in the same department. So really excited to have you guys on tonight.
Right. Yeah, we're peaking, man. We're peaking right here. It's all downhill after this podcast from
Well, good stuff. So, I mean, just to start off with the episode, just a little bit about background between you two. Start off with Zach. So, Zach, you are Pawnee as well as Taylor. Which band of Pawnee are you, and are you related, or do you belong to any other tribal nations?
Oh, yeah, correct. So, yeah, my name is Zach Rice, and yeah, I'm Skiri Pawnee, but I have a lot of familial connections, to a lot of the other bands as well. So,
can you let the audience know, and maybe me, what Skiri is versus like the other bands of Pawnee?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, Pawnee is made up of 4 bands. We have Skiri, like I said, what Carlton is. We have 3 other bands that the Skiri is called the South Bands. That's the Chawi, the Kitkahaki, and the Pitahawidat. So we have these 4 bands that make up the Pawnee tribe.
Awesome. Cool. I did not know that. Great.
Yeah, man.
You might have told me, Carlton, and I just forgot, but that's cool.
Absolutely. That's probably the case. And what about you,
not Zach.
Taylor?
That's right.
I just kept stuttering on. I was like, wait a second. Like, why? I was like staring at Taylor Moore right down there, and it just was not coming out.
When he was in school, Zach and I would always get called the other person's name. Close enough. So, but I am a Kitkahaki, so I'm outnumbered by the Skiri today. So, a little intimidated. No, I come off 3 of the bands. I come off the Skiri and the Pitahawidat, but not the Chawi. And then other tribal nations, I'm Oto, Owl Clan from them, and then I'm Dene. But I don't Salt Clan. I better not say that. Oh yeah. I know I'm Salt Clan. I know Salt Clan and Many Goats, and that's all I know.
Oh,
gotcha.
Yeah, dang. That's what I forgot. My other tribes. Yeah. So I'm also on my mom's side, Sac and Fox and Oto as well, like Taylor. Owl Clan too, same as Taylor.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So did both of you guys grow up in Oklahoma originally? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll do mine. Zach and I have grown up together. I may be a couple months older than Zach, but I was a grade above him. So I know I've grown up Pawnee my whole life. Pawnee. It's funny because whenever I'd have to introduce myself at school, those first couple of days, and they're like at college, and they're like, "Where are you from?" Something you're about yourself, and I'd go, "My name's Taylor Moore. I'm Pawnee from Pawnee," and that was it, and moved on to the next person. So yes, whole life.
Yeah, same thing for me. My whole life, born and raised in Pawnee. That was kind of my go-to intro to Pawnee from Pawnee.
Gotcha. So kind of like growing up, both you guys growing up in Pawnee, Oklahoma on the old Pawnee res, what for a lot of the guests that we have on here, right, they kind of have some sort of like childhood connection to either like dinosaurs, like nature, or history. Zach, with you, like, were you any of those kind of like kids growing up, like a history buff, nature nerd?
Oh man, I'll definitely say all of the above as I sit here with the Jurassic Park t-shirt on y'all's podcast. So man, yeah, like Jurassic Park. I loved dinosaurs as a kid, man, and I would say Jurassic Park kind of left that lasting impression on me. And then has nothing to do with what you just asked about dinosaurs, but Jaws. Jaws was another big one for me when I was a kid. I used to want to be a marine biologist, but yeah, that didn't work out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so man, nature, everything, man. I love fishing, love hunting. I was always outside. I was one of those, I'd say a weird kid, collecting rocks, not like a legit rock collection, you know, like awesome looking, but man, you just see some kind of unique rock and I had to have it, you know? So I was one of those kids, man. And I've always loved history too. Loved being around old people, hearing stories, whether that was, you know, my grandma or other old people. So yeah, man, just all of the above.
Excellent. And what about you, Taylor?
I would lean more towards nature. I was always outside fishing, like Zach was saying. And then the history, it was more our history. It was more like Pawnee history, our culture that I gravitated towards, not necessarily American history or world history, anything kind of like that. It was more, I wanted to know who I was, I guess, or, you know, where I come from, our people come from, those kind of things. And then like me, I've grown up singing in our tribal doings, you know, like our ceremonies and stuff. So that's always been right there. I've always been connected to that.
Gotcha. Is there good fishing around Pawnee, Oklahoma?
In my spots, yes.
Yeah, can't share those with you all. No,
I can't share those. I'm sorry, but yes.
Yeah, a lot of pond hopping, man. So
I gotcha. Understood.
Sorry.
Go ahead, David.
I was gonna say, did you guys know Carlton like as younger, or did you guys meet him through academic stuff currently, or like through the tribe? Or
I'm trying to think. So Carlton, I think we met maybe by phone. Oh, I think he was at Wyoming at the time, I want to say. And
yeah, that's right.
You had reached out, and so that was the first time I had met Carlton. But I know his folks, the Govers. So
okay,
that's one big thing about being Pawnee. You know, who's your folks? So whoever your relatives is, people always ask that in Pawnee. You know, well, who's your folks? Who's your relatives? Who's your grandma, grandpa? So through his family, I guess I knew Carlton.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't spend much time in Pawnee growing up. I was always in Wind River or Crow Agency. Was kind of I was always hanging around like Shoshones, Arapahoes, and Crows, and I'd get back for homecoming like every now and then. I was just helping out my Aunt Clem most of the time. So I didn't really know these guys when I was growing up. But yeah, I spoke to you guys. I think John Michael Knife Chief got me in touch with you guys. I had a question about the Pawnee language, and I had like a brief phone call with the two of you. I think you guys had just finished up your degrees.
Maybe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I do remember meeting you at the museum over there in Pawnee.
Yeah, that's right. You walked in when I was there for to collect some stories from some folks. That's a fun museum. Like just to sit with Uncle Herb and Adrian and Matt and just kind of talk was a really interesting work environment.
Mm-hmm. You can never go in there for a couple minutes. It has to be, you have to be committed for at least an hour with all of them.
Absolutely. So did you guys go to the Pawnee Nation College after high school, or did you guys go directly to a 4-year institution? I
went to Bacone College for 1 semester, crawled across that finish line for that semester, and then went to the Pawnee College and then got all my grades up. So got my associates from there and then went on to a 4-year.
Yeah, so like Taylor, I actually started out at OU first, coming out of high school. And funny story, I told you I loved rocks as a kid. I was actually a geology and paleontology major. But chemistry kicked my butt, man, and kind of ruined those hopes and dreams pretty quick. So yeah, after OU, man, I transferred. I went to Oklahoma State, actually, secondary ed. Carlton, that's probably another thing we have in common. You mentioned wanting to be a history teacher and a coach. I've heard on one of your podcasts. I was that same guy. I was that same young guy. Didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I ended up at our tribal college, and that's kind of where I found myself and found, what I wanted to do, I guess, what I love to do.
Gotcha. Cool. So, I mean, just continue on, Zach, like, how big were the classes at Pawnee Nation College, and what did you learn there that kind of led you to go back to OU?
Good question. Yeah. So the classes, I mean, they're small, man. I mean, Dottie, what do you think? Biggest class you ever had? Maybe like 10 people tops?
I think no. At the college, I've had like 7. I've had one where we had about 7 in there, and at the last month, it was just me and the teacher showing up. So I was like, I know I'm getting an A because I'm the only one showing up.
Yeah, I would say, maybe, I don't know, anywhere from 4 to like 8, 10 people for me. Mm-hmm. And kind of finding myself there. My uncle, one of my uncles, Tom Knife Chief, he used to teach the Pawnee language there. So he left a big impression on me with our language. And that's kind of where, I won't say that love for our language began, but that's where he kind of nurtured that love.
Gotcha. And what about you, Taylor? What did you experience at Pawnee Nation College? And like, did you guys go to PNC at the same time?
No, I think I had finished right before Zach started. So mine, I liked it. I mean, the classes were small. I was at home. Tuition was really cheap because it was going through Northern Oklahoma College. So like a full semester was a couple $100. And we got that Pawnee check for school. So I got like an extra couple $100 because classes were really cheap. But I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I took the Pawnee classes there as well, like Zach said. Yeah, and got my grades up. I don't think I ever. So from coming from Bacone, where I had my best grade was like a C maybe, and going to the Pawnee College because it was right there. Got all A's. I don't think I ever got a B there, so it made my GPA look really good.
Gotcha. And so, Taylor, like when did you decide to go to OU? And originally, when you transferred, were you intending to do linguistic anthropology, or was there kind of like a moment where you switched majors?
Well, I went from the Pawnee College, and I went to Northeastern State University in Tahlequah. Zach had went to OU, but I hadn't went there yet. But I had went for American Indian Studies. That was 2011. Graduated in 2013. So I had a minor in, the first one was in linguistics. The second one was hospitality and tourism, tourism management. It was great. Well, the plan was that the Pawnee Nation was supposed to get this giant casino up there by the Kansas border. And I remember at Pawnee Powwow.
Yeah,
remember that? I remember at Pawnee Powwow, they had the blueprints. I thought, oh shoot, I'm gonna have to get in on this, And then
that's smart. Yeah.
And then our tribe, being our tribe, that's all I'll say is they kind of blew that chance. So then I was sitting there in hospitality and tourism, and I was thinking like, well, I guess most people just work their way up to manager. And I was like, I'm going to jump into something else. And then I always been interested in the language. Zach and I, when we were in high school, we took a Pawnee language and history multiple years. So I got into linguistics then, and then I got it as a minor and graduated in 2013.
Awesome.
Gotcha.
I have a question. One, I guess there's 2 questions. Could we define for the audience what linguistics is versus like linguistic anthropology? And my other question was, I think Pawnee, if I remember correctly from Carlton, it's Caddoan, right?
Okay. Yeah, correct.
Cool. That was a deep pull in my head. You guys can go from there.
Yeah. So, Tay, did you throw that one to me, that question?
Yeah.
Dang, we talked about this before. So I would guess this is my definition, I guess, of it. What I've seen, what have I experienced. Sorry. I guess linguistic anthropology is a little more the study of language, like within its culture, more holistic, I would say. Oh, linguistic or just linguistics at OU anyway was in the modern literatures, languages, and linguistics department. And it was a little more just the study of the structure, I guess, of language from what I saw anyway, from my perspective. So that'd be kind of my definition of it.
Gotcha. Okay. I like that first one because it's the study of it within one's culture. That makes sense. And that's why we do like signs and symbols and stuff. Okay. Yeah. Neat. I guess we kind of discussed that, like what made you guys want to do it, but like, do you like it? Do you enjoy doing like linguistics?
Yeah. I remember when I was at Northeastern State, they had this, language revitalization class, because it's over there at the Cherokee Nation, the Cherokee Nation headquarters in Tahlequah, and they had I had this teacher, and he had put out all these. There's a PowerPoint, and it had all these tribal nations on it, and it said after 5 years, this many are going to be gone, and then I think we were at 10 years we were supposed to be gone. I don't know why that kind of just made me mad for this guy to be up there saying in 10 years your language is going to be extinct. Me being Pawnee and hearing that, it just bugged me, and I was almost kind of lit a fire underneath me. But it was funny because at the same time, I had no idea Zach was in linguistics from OU. I had no idea because we had kind of lost touch there for a while after I graduated from high school and Zach graduated, doing our own things. So that's kind of where. But that's how I got my introduction to it, linguistics.
Nice. I like that.
That's always been something I was curious about, is that we had two linguists come up at the same time, similar in age, just so happened one focused on Skiri and the other focused on South Band. Like kind of that combination, it always struck me as like, man, I wish I had like a South Band archaeologist that I could work with, because that would make things so much easier, and like have that part of support that you two appear to have in each other in your guys' studies. You guys are kind of like this package now with the Pawnee. Like I don't hear like Zach Rice without Taylor Moore being mentioned, and vice versa. It's just kind of where you guys have been. So with that, I think we're gonna go ahead and end this first segment. We'll be right back to talk about OU Linguistic Anth here in segment 2 of episode 89.
Welcome back to episode 89 of the Life and Words podcast. Almost to 100, guys. This is gonna be cool. Yeah, so we're here with Taylor and Zach, and we're talking about the Pawnee language, Pawnee culture, and linguistics. In last segment, we talked about how you kind of got like a fire lit under you, about revitalizing the language, or someone telling you that it was going to be dead in a few years. Is that kind of what fueled you both to do your master's in it? And like, what exactly was your master's work? Okay,
so like how Zach and I, we both graduated with our bachelor's in 2013. Again, we had no. Zach and I had kind of lost contact there for a little bit after high school, but we grew up together, But we just. Life happens, and
sure.
Zach had called me like, I finished in May. I think Zach called me in like February. I was like, who is this? Who is this calling me, But I was just like, I answered it, and we talked on the phone for a while, and he was asking me, hey, you still interested in language? And I was finishing up that minor in linguistics. I was like, yeah, matter of fact, I am. I'm almost done. And he was saying he was too. And then he asked me if I wanted to apply for the Breath of Life Language Conference 2013 in Washington, D.C. And I was like, well, worst they could do is say no. So we applied, and then if we didn't get in. So Zach, you want to talk about that? Or?
Yeah. So Tay was at NSU, I was at OU, and I guess I had some tabs on you, Dottie, because my auntie is with his brother, so. Amber, she told me he was interested in language, so that's how I knew, Dottie.
Okay.
So I hit him up and asked him, and like he said, dang if we didn't get in, Breath of Life Language Conference there in Washington, D.C. And I think for that conference, one of my mentors had mentioned that to me. Her name was Mary Lynn. She was at OU at the time, and she's actually at the Smithsonian now, actually. But yeah, she had mentioned that. Zach, I know you're doing language. You should apply for this. And so after she told me that, that's when I reached out to Taylor. Taylor was all for it. We apply. We get in. When we get in and we get accepted, we see a name as a part of the Pawnee team that we didn't know. And Carlton, if you wouldn't know, it was Tom Evans. Tom Evans' name was on our Pawnee language team. And me and Taylor were like, who's Tom Evans? Who's Tom Evans? Because we saw another name we didn't know too. And that was our linguist, I think. Her name was Susan Kung. So I think both of us probably called back home to Pawnee to our folks and say, hey, who's Tom Evans? Anyone know who Tom Evans is? And my dad said, yeah, I know him. And I think Tay, your folks said that as well. And yeah, so Tom was a gentleman. He worked there at the Smithsonian for quite a while. Amazing gentleman. I believe he was on our tribal council at one time in the maybe 80s or 90s or so as well. And that's when my dad knew him from. And anyway, he was there working at the Smithsonian, and Tom's a resourceful man. So I'm sure he heard two Pawnee guys are applying for this language conference, and I guess he threw his name in the hat too, and he got in. So we was a team of three at that point. Not anything you want to add to that?
It was funny because we got there and it was like this giant conference room, and was it the American Indian Museum or was it that museum, the very top? And Zach and I think we were getting some snacks at the back, and then I wonder who Tom Evans is, and we see this Indian man coming out with the beaded belt, and I was like, I bet this is Tom. And he was like, yeah. We introduced ourselves, and Zach and I, we was going to sit in the very back. That's what we like to do. And he was like, I got some seats up here in the front. And we was right in the front, in front of everybody. We had to go in front of everybody. But it was great. It was great to meet Tom. And that's kind of where it was a 2-week language conference. We got to research the language. We got to look through archives, look through artifacts, see bundles, see fans, see feathers, all the stuff that we've either heard of or seen pictures of, but never seen in person. So that was great for Zach and I.
Man, I only met Tom once. He came when I gave a presentation at the museum about my research, and he met up with me after, and he wanted to sit down with me and just tell me everything he knew. And I was like, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Like, my cousin Phil's driving me. Like, but next time I'm in Pawnee, like, I'll sit down with you, Tom, and let's do this. And he passed away like the month right after that. So I never got that chance to sit down and meet with him.
I think we'll get into it, but that's kind of one of our gripes with the tribe is they're waiting so long that we're having knowledgeable elders pass, But yeah, Tom was great. He was great.
Yeah. So after this conference, what happened next between you two?
Okay, so Zach, while we were at the conference, he was saying, because we roomed together, Zach and I, and we stayed at the George Washington University dorm, and no TV. It was just me and Zach talking, and then he was like asking me about school, and I was like, man, I was done after my associates, And then I got a bachelor's degree, and I was like, no, for real, I'm done. And then every night he kept asking me, oh, what do you think about a master's degree? And I was like, no. And he said something that was like, we wouldn't have to go through Parks. We wouldn't have to go through another linguist to learn about our language. We could do everything ourselves. We wouldn't have to go through other people. And that kind of resonated with me. And then by the end of it, I was like, yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I had 2 weeks to persuade him. I can be pretty persuasive when I need to be. So worked on him for 2 weeks, and yeah, we both end up in that master's program. I think we applied that fall maybe of 2014. And then I think I had just finished my bachelor's. We got accepted in the spring. Mm-hmm. And then we started that following fall.
Excellent. So both of you guys, and it was the Linguistic Anthropology program, right? Or do you guys have degrees in anthropology, or is Linguistic Anth under a separate college?
So at Linguistic Anthro, it's under anthropology. At OU, they had sociocultural Linguistic Anthro. I think those are merged now, but at the time, I don't believe they were. And then I guess our particular program was called the MALA program, and that's, Taylor, what is that? Master of Arts in Applied Linguistic Anthropology, I think. Yeah. Gotcha.
And were your masters, were these theses based, or were they like project based? Starting with you, Taylor.
Yeah. Thesis. We both of us had to write our original one. So I was intimidated as soon as I stepped on campus. I've been to OU football games. And I remember going to the football games and be like, I don't know where I'm going. I only went off the main roads and parked in someone's yard and paid $20 to go to a football game. And I remember walking through campus and there ain't no way I would survive here. And then next thing I know, I'm there. But Zach and I, those first 2 semesters, we had the same classes, same program. So I just followed Zach wherever he went because he knew where he was going.
Yeah. What was your thesis about, Dodie?
Oh, yeah. My thesis, it was how we can use Pawnee music as language revitalization tools. So in my thesis, I focused on Pawnee hymns. The original idea was one of our ceremonies, the Kitkahaki ceremony. It has certain songs that we only sing with that ceremony. And the more I thought about it, the more I looked into it. I was like, no, I don't think this should be out there. So then my uncle, Herb, who's the Cultural Resource Division Director, he was asking me about recording some hymns that he knew. And so as we were recording him, after each one, he would tell me like the backstory behind that hymn, what it means, who had wrote it. And then, so it was a little like gift idea. That's what it was. And then I brought it back to Norman because Zach and I were, I don't know if we were in Norman at that time or not. And we started talking about it. I was like, I think this is what my thesis is going to be, how we can use songs, but in this case, it was hymns as language revitalization tools. So that's kind of what my focus was on.
So I'm not too familiar with it. I know, Carlton, you don't speak Pawnee too much or at all that I know of. Growing up, did your parents speak Pawnee? Did you hear it a lot as a kid, or was it just kind of in stories and songs and things like that?
Okay. Yeah, my dad, he knows a little bit. I will say that. And, but I've been around the big drum probably since I was 10. So singing at our ceremony, singing at our dances. So that's kind of where I've been hearing the language more. And then my dad, he's also runs meetings for the Native American Church. So again, language is always in there. Zach and I were kind of, when our last first language speakers passed, Zach and I were just kids, I wish we would have been around them, but we were outdoor kids. So it was probably fishing or so. We were only like less than 10 probably, or around 10. So we didn't really care. We didn't know. We just wanted to go outside. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for me, I guess I just knew words and phrases here and there. So I wouldn't consider myself fluent or anything by any means, just words here and there that my dad knew from his dad. And I guess my grandpa, he was fluent. He passed away long before I was born, maybe 5 years or so. So I never even knew him, but yeah. So I just a couple generations removed from fluent speakers, but I remember hearing here and there in the community, but like Taylor said, I was a kid and I was outside running around, get that energy out kind of kid,
Yeah, and like the gravity of it doesn't really sink in that young as a kid too.
Yeah.
Because I know I have, Christmas VHSs of me as a kid opening presents. So do you guys have recordings or any kind of old 80s, 90s camcorder stuff of your grandparents speaking Pawnee or other people in the tribe?
We have recordings. We have cassette tapes.
Okay.
Old reel-to-reels. Yeah, so we do have them talk about. What we don't really have is, I guess, conversing. Normal conversation one-on-one. We have word list or just a random phrase kind of in the background. But I guess at the time the practice wasn't to have normal conversations in the language and record them. It was more word list, I guess. So, Zach, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I guess I'll add on to that. Yeah, like Taylor said, the elicited forms, I guess, how linguists do it's a good old scientific method for you, right? You want to control all the variables and conversations, messy. And so, it wasn't the norm back then to record that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of that, but we do have a ton of audio recordings like Taylor mentioned though.
Is there?
Sorry. Yeah. So growing up, my uppet, well, a pittet, right? That's my grandfather. That's what you guys have taught me.
Yeah.
A deepet. Yeah.
A deepet. Yeah. Because that's something you guys mentioned in class that everyone just says uppet. And it's like, that's not necessarily correct. A teepet. He died when I was little. So I don't have many memories of him or remember his voice, but I remember driving back from Pawnee that same trip. And my cousin Phil put in the Pawnee Blue Book CDs for Skiri. And then that first speaker is Phil Grover. And that was the first time I heard my a teepet's voice in over 2 decades. Mm-hmm. So those things are pretty, I mean, they have a lot of, my understanding is they have some pretty old folks in there. Those were recorded back in the 80s?
Like in the 70s, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm right. Yeah, but there's a lot of first language speakers on that. Again, they're talking somewhat formal, I guess. So again, it gets back to that. I wish we had a normal conversation. What can be dropped? What can't be dropped? You know, like I don't want to say slang Pawnee, but you know how like in English, we don't have to pronounce every word because we know the language. We could cut words off. We could, yeah. I wish we had that in Pawnee, but we have very few items like that.
So are there ways in which, because it's just so fascinating to me, because I mean, obviously it's like sad that these languages are going away, but like we are able to reconstruct them with some ways. So like, do you guys have root words that you know like mean X, Y, and Z that you can then try and like go through one of those old recordings and understand it? Or is it a little more difficult without the conversation?
Go for it, Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of related to a lot of the research I did for my master's work. So just like what we're talking about here, like when you have a sleeping language, you're only as good as the documentation, I guess you could put it like that. Mm-hmm. Whether that's audio, whether that's written video, you know, but I don't know what that video would look like for Pawnee way back, you know, but yeah. So yeah, we have quite a bit of documentation, a lot of good documentation. Dr. Douglas Park, he was a really good linguist. Dr. Jean Weltfish, going all the way back to the early 1900s, she was a really good linguist. And we heard a lot of good things actually about her through Tom Evans and through his folks. They remembered her. And what Tom relayed to us was that, you know, she was a really, really good speaker for a Chaudaksaka woman, they said, you know, for a non-Pawnee, a white woman, you know, she knew what she was saying and she could understand well. So that kind of gets to my research. We have a related language in Pawnee. It's known as a Rickarol. They're up there in the North Dakota area. And so as a kid, right, kind of going back to history, me being a history nerd and loving to hear stories, I used to always ask my dad about different things. Hey, what did your dad used to tell you? And so some of the stories he would relate to me would be about the Pawnees and their Rickarols. So I always knew we had this related tribe to us that was no longer around us. And then kind of more recent, around this maybe last 10 years or so, people started using related languages to reconstruct languages that had no more speakers. And in those people's instances, you know, their languages hadn't been spoken for hundreds of years. You know, here's ours that only hasn't been spoken for maybe a decade or so. Mm-hmm. And so I knew it could work. And that got me into my research and basically using the comparative method, which is a historical linguistics type of thing that linguists use to generally, or traditionally, I guess I could say, either to make genetic relationships between languages or to make like reconstructed proto-forms between these related languages. So what I wanted to do was not to establish a relationship that we already knew existed, but to use that method and use it for more practical purposes. So basically, words that we don't have in Pawnee, Taylor and I are not first language speakers. And I really don't like making words up, I guess, you know, because is that my authority to even do that? I'm not a first language speaker, but we have this method. We have this comparative method that we could kind of flip around for practical purposes, and we could take words from a Rickraw that were documented in a Rickraw that we don't have in either dialect of Pawnee, and we can reconstruct a really accurate form that would be for Skiri and the South Bend Pawnee dialects. And so that's kind of what I did with my research. And the most proud, I guess I'll say, of my own work, of my own word that I proposed was based off an Arikawa word for moose. And it makes a lot of sense that Pawnees don't have a word for moose because they just weren't in our geographic area. We weren't far enough, north or east. And so the Arikawas had this word. And what I did was I could see the Arikawa word right in the documentation. And there's some hints there, some clues left behind. And Pawnee's this polysynthetic language that, meaning that words are made up of multiple parts, I guess, multiple meaningful parts. Mm-hmm. And there's these hints left behind in Arikawa, and I could break that word down and basically reconstruct a word for Pawnee. And so, Dottie, you remember how they said that in Arikawa for moose?
I'll try. We'll see if my Arikawa is great. I wrote it down. Waiswadu.
Yeah.
Waiswadu.
Yeah, waiswadu, okay. Something like that. And so based on that Arikawa word, now this will sound nothing like Arikawa, even though it's a really closely related language. But our Pawnee word for that is Bachusiru. Bachusiru. And so what we had to do to even propose that word, we had to establish sound correspondences between the languages. And then we had to do like a morphophonological analysis of these languages. So these meaningful parts and kind of where sounds meet, I guess, where sounds change. After doing that type of analysis, that's how we go from Waisharu to Pachusiru. And both of those words are made up of the meaningful parts. It'd be pa in Pawnee for elk. Chus is your nose in Pawnee, and then aru means soft. So literally that Arikawa word meant a soft-nosed elk.
Huh.
And so,
yo, that is really cool. That's awesome, thesis to do there.
I love etymology, and I've been really excited with the past couple language classes you guys had. We're really breaking down the words, and it's just been absolutely fantastic.
Before we end, can I ask how related are Arikawa and Pawnee? Is it like Spanish and Italian, or is it like kind of more distant than that?
That's a really good question. So, from my understanding, so Pawnee and Arikawa are the most closely related languages between. I'm going to throw another term out there for you. Northern Caddoan languages. Okay. So the Northern Caddoan languages are Pawnee, they're Arikawa, they're Kichi or Kichai. I've heard it pronounced both ways. And then Wichita. So Arikawa and Pawnee are the most closely related. At one time, it had to have been the same language. We've seen in documentation that I guess I don't know if they'd be traders or who, like fur traders, which is kind of odd though, because a lot of times they weren't literate. So maybe they're missionaries. That would make more sense. You see records of like the Arikawa people speaking two dialects of Arikawa, and one of those dialects of Arikawa is more closely related to Pawnee. And so I think I've seen in Dr. Parks's work that he's mentioned that now they're mutually unintelligible languages, and that's because Arikawa has quite a few more sound changes going on than Pawnee. But underlyingly, underneath, if you could look at the grammar and kind of not get too focused on what your eyes and your ears are telling you, then you could actually see that it's practically the same language, and Arikawa just has different sounds, basically.
That is so cool. Wow. We should probably end the segment there, but that's so cool, man.
Yeah, and we'll be right back for segment 3 of episode 89. Stay tuned. And welcome back to segment 3. Remember, this is a special episode, so we'll have 4 segments, so this isn't the last one. How long did it take you guys to get your master's in linguistic anthropology, starting with Taylor?
Let's see. We had 2014. Is that when we started, Zach?
Yeah, fall.
And then we graduated in the summer of 2016. Yeah, so 2 years and a semester.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then so, Zach, what was the game plan? You get your master's in linguistic anth, and what were your plans after getting that degree?
So that kind of takes us back almost to 2013 or so.
Yeah, I'm about to say the same thing.
We had mentioned before to our tribe that Taylor and I were going to do this. We were going to go to this Breath of Life conference. We were thinking about going to get our masters. That would give the tribe about 3 years to start planning, getting something together, getting something ready, as in a language program. And so that was the plan. We ended up graduating, and there was no language program. I mean, to put it bluntly, I guess there was no language program. There was a lot of turnover on the council, and so those plans kind of fell through. We graduated. I think, Taylor, you were still working at Oto, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. I was working there contract work, so yeah.
Yeah, and then so right after, I can't remember if it's right after graduation or a little bit after, I actually started working for our relatives, the Wichita tribe, to help them with an kind of a archive project. And so that's kind of what we did. Is I had these skills now that weren't being put to use for my language, and so the Pawnees have this relationship with the Wichita, and hey, I had the skills to help them out. So that's what I did. And then Taylor was over there working for the Otos. And then I think we ended up writing a grant or something, right, Dottie?
Yeah, like a mini grant.
A small grant. It wasn't very big. Maybe $40,000, maybe 35, somewhere around there. We got this grant, and we started up having language classes, community classes with this grant. And that was, do you remember, Tay?
That was the fall of 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, because we finished in the summer. We had gotten that grant. We were able to create curriculum. Just like any native language, you can't just go to the store and buy Pawnee language book 1, 2, 3, whatever. You have to create that. To create that, we don't have no fluent speakers. We don't have no language 1 speakers. So there's a lot of research Zach and I had to do. And then we were able to begin classes, community classes, that fall. So we like to follow like I don't want to say like a school year. So we have like little semesters. We start in the fall, end before Christmas, take a little break, start back up in January, go until May, have the summer off.
Got you. How many, what was the reception? When you guys come back with these degrees, like what was the reception by the Pawnee populace? And that could, what did council say? And like, what did the regular Pawnees have to say about it?
Well, I will say that for the most part, it was positive. For the council, it just seems like they still see Zach and I, even today, as children, as kids, because most of them have seen Zach and I grow up. Not realizing we're in our 30s now, but they're like, oh, those boys, the feeling I got was like, just cute. These two boys are trying to save our language, rather than like see us as people with master's degrees.
Right. Yeah.
So, but from the public, everybody seemed to be excited for us, to be excited that we were going to be teaching the language. But I will put it this way: right now we're not a language program. We're not it's just always just been me and Zach, just two guys working for other tribes, but in our free time working on the Pawnee language. So, Zach, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I guess the other thing, is the general populace were excited, and I think we saw that excitement, that interest level in our language in our very first class. I think Taylor and I, we might have been expecting, I think we said maybe 20 tops, Dottie, will come, probably 20 tops based on this off of previous language attempts. Maybe 20, we'll print off 25. We'll print off 25 just in case our numbers aren't right and we have a few extra people. What we were really expecting is probably maybe, 10 to 15 people show up. our very first class, man, like 75 to 80 people show up. We're at our museum there in Pawnee, unprepared because, I mean, we we did not prepare for that many people to come. I don't even think we had that many seats, right, Tay?
Yeah, I remember we had to go up to the top floor and grab chairs and bring them back down. I was like, these people must be here for something else. Must be some kind of free food event or something. But yeah, we had about 75 and then that post, I mean, it dropped off a little bit, which is natural, but we still had about 45 that first year probably, which is a really good number, way more than what Zach and I was expecting. And that's the kind of what we was talking about, Zach and I, that the interest there from our community was great. They supported us. Anything we wanted, they let us know, hey, anything we could do. So we asked for, if you guys have any cassette tapes, old recordings of your family, we will digitize it for free, give it back to you, keep the originals, however you want to do it. So we got a lot of people donating a lot of stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so did you guys end up working for the Pawnee Nation College at all, like teaching language, or is this strictly just kind of this volunteer basis stuff that you guys were doing on your own?
Yeah, I don't know what year that was. That they had a language teacher there, and then I don't know what happened. So they weren't teaching Pawnee for a few semesters, and my sister-in-law was working there at the time, and she asked if I was interested. And at the time, I think I had I'd quit the OTO job just because we had a lot of stuff coming up, Zach and I. So I was like, yeah, we have time to do this now. So Zach and I would be, I don't want to say the peak of our language learning, but we got really good at it. But we had like 5 or 6 classes. We had the community class. We had the elder class, which was terrifying. Then we had the college class. And then we had eventually had a Pawnee 2 class. So that's how we got started with the Pawnee College. And it felt good to give back because Zach and I had both graduated from there.
Yeah. Oh, and all the time. Where was we living? I think I was living in Norman at the time.
I think we both were. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we only worked Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It was great, but then tax time hit, and it was horrible.
Yeah. So Norman's about hour and a half, 2-hour drive to Pawnee, I think.
Yeah, probably about a 2-hour.
Yeah.
So you guys did that 6 times over the course of the week, driving from Norman to Pawnee and back.
Oh, we would stay in Pawnee.
Okay, gotcha.
For Tuesday and Wednesday, and go hunt or do outside stuff. Zach and I throughout those days, and then we would go back home.
Yeah. Something that I've always been curious about, like when it comes to your guys' studies, are you guys more focused on learning kind of like the grammar and the structure of sentences, or are there parts of the language that you're kind of gravitated towards? Like I know, and this is just, I got a text from my cousin Dave the other day asking about star knowledge and like the words related to star knowledge. And so do you guys have any of those kind of interests, like specific like subsets of our language that belong to a particular part of our culture? Or are you guys more primarily concerned with just getting the structure, grammar, and etymology down?
I guess more of a personal interest. Yeah, I'm interested in the, astronomical stuff as well. Actually, all of it. I mean, who am I kidding? I'm a big old nerd, man. So anything you got, throw it at me. Like astronomical stuff. So Pawnees, we're known for that type of knowledge. So I love looking into that. I love looking into our month names. It has to do with a lot of just environmental type stuff. Would have been back in Nebraska, whether that's like migratory birds that we name, months after, or when we would plant our food or our crops back then. So that stuff's always interesting to me. The etymology of words, of course, is always interesting to me. On my own personal time, I love looking at, I love comparing our Pawnee language to Arikawa, to Wichita as well. I mentioned I worked there too. So when I worked on Wichita, I loved it because, you could tell they're related with a lot of their sounds, but again, going back to that grammar underneath, you could tell the way our people thought was very similar, and you see that reflected in the grammar, I guess you could say.
And what about you, Taylor?
Yeah, just like Zach said, there's not one thing I look at more than the other. It's kind of just, there's a lot of settings, a lot of topics to research, I guess. So we can't just focus on one and leave out the other one. So we had like we hadn't done stars for a while, and then someone had mentioned that when we were still doing, this was pre-pandemic when we were doing in-person classes, and someone had mentioned it. So Zach and I really got to study that star maps, our star chart, and then we had a whole lesson ready. I think we just got to introduce it, and then we took a break, and then we never got to come back because of the pandemic. But at the time, Zach was working for the museum here in the city, so it kind of related to his work at the time. So yeah, so any of it.
Gotcha.
Has there been like any like rewarding situations that like or memorable situations that have come out of this that you remember, or like trying to teach this stuff or learn this stuff?
Yeah. For me personally, man, it's great, especially as a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher, if that makes sense. But when me and Zach started doing these classes, and I enjoy it now. I really enjoy it. And there's a moment where your Pawnee students or whatever, it clicks in their mind. You can kind of see that, and they start kind of putting things together. What Zach and I like to do, we don't like to teach grammar. We don't like to sit there and we don't like to do all that. We like to naturally kind of show them patterns, and then they kind of figure out themselves, usually ask us questions. But then with the elder class, that was great too, because although it was terrifying at the very first one, because they were quick to jump on me and Zach for little words, like the common word for salt or pepper or something. They were ready. As soon as we said it, they were ready to, no, I didn't hear it that way. And this is just a variant of the same word. But then the more we went on, the more we could see it unlock stuff in their head. So when we first started, they had no idea what we're talking about. Towards the end, they were like, I remember my grandma would say that, or it would remind it. It would almost unlock things. I've even seen that with my own grandma. Mm-hmm. Before she passed out, I would go down there. We go down to I always call her Ucka. I can't get that, say that Atika, my grandma. So she's always going to be Ucka. Anyway, so I'd always go down there and see her. And I would used to just speak English, and I started slowly trying to converse with her in Pawnee, and it almost seemed to click with her as well, as stuff that was becoming unlocking in her mind. So that's what's been rewarding for me, and just to hear people, especially the Zoom class, the Zoom class to meet a lot of Pawnees that don't live around Pawnee, and to hear them using the language, to ask questions about the language. The interest level there is kind of what is rewarding to me. So I don't know, Zach, you want to?
Yeah, I'll jump on that too. Yeah, I'd say the same thing. That interest level, it's been extraordinary. When we were having these classes in person, what really made me feel good was that, man, we had people coming all the way from Apache, Oklahoma, all the way up to Pawnee, Oklahoma. And that's I don't even know how far a drive that is, over 3 hours probably, or all the way from Tahlequah, Oklahoma to Pawnee, just to learn from two dudes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just two guys, but yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of rewarding moments like that.
That's so cool, guys. And you're reviving like an almost extinct language, but like doing it over Zoom too. It's like kind of a weird thing, but neat, Yeah. Well, yeah. Congrats. That's like really cool stuff. Just growing up, I guess here out east where I'm from, like we didn't really learn. There's Iroquoian languages. You got words for different towns and stuff like that, but you never hear like an indigenous language like spoken. So it's just cool to talk with people like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all rewarding to Zach and I, be able to study our language, to kind of get into the thought of old Pawnees, I guess. But to say it out loud sounds funny. I will mention that when we started our master's program at OU, we was in our first class. And again, it was intimidating to me. I don't know if Zach, you felt the same way or you were used to it, but I remember in that first social cultural theory class, they had went around the room and you got to introduce yourself, what you're studying. And so we were in there with all kinds of, not just our cohort, like other people, and they were doing groundbreaking research. And like, I remember Justin, I don't know if he listens to this, maybe he does, but he was doing like microbiome research. They were doing like, I don't know, just really type of that kind of research, groundbreaking research. And then it got to me and Zach at the end of the table, and it was like, all right, your turn. My name's Taylor. I'm Pawnee, and I'm studying the Pawnee language. So Zach said the same thing right after me. So it was, yeah, but we enjoy it. And then I remember our people in class afterwards like, no, that's interesting. And I was like, no, it's not. It's interesting to like me and Zach, but it's not interesting like you guys are doing groundbreaking research. So
Yeah.
But I think out of, it's probably one of the most necessary kinds of research. The waking up of indigenous languages. Like we're seeing, and I don't know if you guys agree with that, but we're seeing a lot of it, right? Like across the board, like a lot of young indigenous folks like ourselves are getting into language awakening. So we're kind of seeing that whole, in 2020, like a bunch of people starting to do this work. Cause I know like some of my chats with Matt Reed, I know they try to do like language work back in the 80s, but there's just so much arguing. Like you guys were talking about, like some of those old folks talking about, well, that's not how I heard salt being used. But back in the 80s, there was a lot more first language speakers, and there was a lot of more argument over who had the right Pawnee than that. So I don't know. I really appreciate your work. I love the classes when I go to them. You guys make them. I've always hated learning languages, Spanish, Russian, German, hated it. But this stuff that you guys do with the Zoom meetings has been fantastic.
yeah, thank you. We were nervous about it. We never done that kind of Zoom, and we didn't know how it would work. So we're in our first semester of it. But the people that I've talked to seem to like it. I always ask them, like, do I need to be more serious? Because me and Zach joke around a lot with everybody. So, but they said they like it. So we'll continue to.
Especially at the beginning when you guys were just trying to show the language and having like different words that were similar and talking about giving people Indian names like Meat Wolf. I just can't get Meat Wolf out of my head.
It was funny because the stuff that you can Google, and I just typed in, I wonder what Meat Wolf is, and it some kind of 4-year-old's drawing showed up. So our friend Russell, who helps us now, that's his Indian name. He doesn't claim that one. So. And then he does his podcast, and then we always call it, when you're gonna invite us to the Meat Wolf Lounge.
Excellent. With that, we'll be right back with episode 89. We got a fourth segment coming up right for you, so stay tuned. And welcome back with episode 89. We still got Taylor Moore and Zach Rice with us. Talk about the Pawnee language reawakening episode here. So kind of something that I've been curious about personally is what sort of pushback, if any, have you seen either from the Pawnee community or even just scholastically? Because you guys did go from, or at least you did, Zach, from Indigenous Studies to anthropology. So have you guys seen any of that? And I guess we'll start that off with Zach.
Yeah. Thanks, Carlton. Yeah, for sure. So I'll say that moving from NAS to, I'll just say anthropology in general, it was different. And not to put anybody on blast or anything like that, because I know when I first wanted to go to anthropology, right, for Ling Anthro, to acquire these skills for my community, I know a lot of my advisors, my mentors, and not to say this is pushback, but they kind of like warned me, I guess you could say, like, I mean, that Indian people and anthropologists have not had a good relationship historically. And in a lot of cases, that goes up to today, whether that's some linguist coming into the community, making a name off of, your community, doing all this language work and never giving back to the community, or that's, in other cases where they do things a lot worse than that, So there was that warning for me, I would say, moving from NAS to Anthro. And I appreciate it, honestly. They were trying to look out for my best interest. And they did that another time while I was at OU, and I didn't listen that time. And it was a history class, and I could say that was the worst class I've ever taken by far. But in this instance, it ended up working out for me. So they warned me about it. And I think the discussion I had with them at the time was that, our Indian people, the law hasn't treated us very well historically and even presently. But we have all these Indian lawyers that went on to become lawyers. And so I just told my mentor, that's the way I see it, is that, I'm thankful for all these lawyers for securing our rights and our indigenous rights. But I think our cultures and our languages have been neglected in many instances. And that's my goal, is to go into linguistic anthropology to do that, to acquire those skills and that particular set of knowledge to help my community out.
I've used that same thing. People ask me all the time, like, why'd you go into Anthro? Anthro's done such bad things for indigenous communities. And I'm like, dude, so's the law. Same thing. But we have indigenous lawyers. You can use the master's tools for your own benefit, right? Like, kind of that saying. So, I mean, I know, like, being an anthropologist all the way through, I know exactly the kind of harm that's been done. But through anthropology, since NAGPRO, we've seen this rise of indigenous archaeology, where it's being decolonized and used for the benefit of indigenous peoples, for, by, and with indigenous peoples. And that's kind of like what I'm in, and which is way more, like, indigenous archaeology is way more prevalent in the Southwest with, like, the Dene and the Pueblos. Like, that's where we see most of it. It hasn't really come out to the plains yet, or even the Southeast. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of the people that I hear that from are usually Oklahoma natives, or natives that were relocated to Oklahoma. So they're just not around it. But I get that.
Yeah. So that was my argument. That, and I mean, educations did a lot of harm to Indian people, but we all got educated. Like you said, get the master's tools and beat them at their own game. So that was my plan.
That's like the one thing my family has. We're either educators or lawyers. Like, that's, and I never saw myself as being either. And then I start teaching anthropology courses, and I just go on rants about indigenous knowledge and, like, flipping the syllabi. Like, no, we're going to talk about this, that, and the other thing. So, yeah. What about you, Taylor? What sort of, quote unquote pushback have you seen from pursuing this kind of education?
I haven't had nothing like Zach had. I was coming from Northeastern State. So, like, Zach was going from OU undergrad to OU graduate student. I was coming from a completely different one. So I didn't really have only one was talking me out of it was me in the mirror. Like, don't do it. It's gonna be tough. But no, other than that, I was always had people from the community were really supportive, kind of what Zach and I were doing, but going to school anyways. So
yeah.
Gotcha. And what about just beyond the education? What about within your communities? Have you seen any pushback? Going off with you, Taylor.
Yeah. I will say that there are those that we have come across. They'll quick to jump at us, you're not saying that right, or they'll kind of talk bad about us behind our back, talk down to our students, saying that, oh, that's just book learning Pawnee, that ain't real Pawnee, and it's sad that those attitudes are out there, and that it's almost funny because we have people that you're not saying that right, yet we have recordings and stuff to back us up. Sometimes it's their own relatives. Sometimes it's their own grandparents, their mom, their dad, their aunts, whatever, saying the word we're teaching, yet people are like, oh, that's wrong. But that's your family. You're calling your own family wrong. So those kind of instances that we don't come back at them with that, but as soon as they leave, me and Zach are talking about it. No, I'm just joking. But so those are the kind of the pushbacks that I have seen, and I wish they didn't have to learn from us. I wish they didn't have to learn at the time we were 20, in our 20s. I wish they didn't have to. I wish me and Zach could have learned from first language speakers, and that generation that was kind of bad mouthing us or our students, they had that chance. When they were our age, they had first language speakers, but they didn't do it. So I don't know. They get mad at us for wanting to pick it up when we just don't want it to go extinct, I guess. Zach, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add on to that. So, with the recording thing, that's always funny. I think one time, I think someone told us, I've never heard that. And they were related to this particular person on the recording, and I played it for them, let them hear it for themselves. And then they were kind of taken aback. And I wasn't doing it to be mean, but as an individual, after so much, you could only take so much, I guess. And so I just let them listen to it, and it kind of took them aback a little bit, and they chilled out, they had an emotional reaction to it, which, in my thinking, stepping back from the situation, trying to step back from that individual level is, hey man, we're dealing with the effects of settler colonialism here, and it is an emotional thing. So what Taylor was saying, like a lot of people on an individual level are saying these things, but that isn't coming from just nowhere. There's a reason why we're teaching the language, right, as 20 and 30-year-olds, and why we're teaching older people, our elders. So I always try to remember that, So on the individual level, I guess, yeah, it's frustrating, but step back and reevaluate, and that's the way some people meant it to be. Mm-hmm. So we're just always fighting against that, I guess. But I guess that's what I'll add to it.
Gotcha. And so ending this segment on a more positive note, not that what you guys said was negative at all. Well, actually, even before that, I mean, something that personally bothers me is that you guys work practically for free, reawakening our language and doing all this work on your own, but then other nations employ you guys like full time to work on their language. So do you guys feel overwhelmed at times doing so much, not only working for other nations who are paying you, but then also doing a lot of this other work for the Pawnee on the side?
Yeah, I'll go first on that one. I'm the language director over there at the Oto Missouri tribe. I've been the director since 2018, but I've been working for them since 2013. And then I think around like 2016 to 2018, I had quit just to work on Pawnee stuff. But I do sometimes feel overwhelmed. But on the Oto side, I got a great staff. I have a staff of 5 full-time, 7 altogether with my contract workers. And so they kind of make it easy on me, but still, I'm working on their language. I love working on their language. I hate doing the paperwork, the administrative side. And that's all I've been doing for these past 2 months, trying to get budgets and grants. And so anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But then having to come back and make sure we have our lesson ready, make sure Zach and I know what we're talking about in our Zoom lessons, our Pawnee classes. And then in the spring, we'll be offering, I don't know if Zach's going to make it, but I will be offering another Pawnee class at the college. So my next year is going to look real busy. It's going to be Monday, the college Pawnee class, Tuesday, our Pawnee community class, Wednesdays, our Oto community class, and then Thursdays back to the college to finish up that week. So we'll see. we'll see how that gets handled, but I love it. I don't see myself doing any other kind of work rather than the language. I can't. And even we get frustrated about the tribe, and I always tell Zach, I said, I can't become a 60-year-old man looking in the mirror and be like, you didn't even try. You didn't even try with your language. You just gave up because it was other people. So that's kind of my motivation. So Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah. I mean, yeah, at times, like Taylor said, it's a lot to do working on our language, Pawnee, that is. Working on a contractual basis, right, to teach these classes. So I've had different jobs, over these past however many years. So before working for the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes Language Program, I was working for the First Americans Museum to help with some of their efforts to get language involved in their museum. But now, yeah, as an employee of the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes, while sometimes it is a lot, the other part of me, I enjoy it because I get to see, what they're doing over here and what we could be doing for our people back home. So I'm thankful, I guess, for the opportunity to always be learning and to be in that type of environment that challenges me, because I'm not a speaker of Cheyenne or Arapaho. Their grammar works a lot different, So I'm thankful, though, on an individual level and a professional level, I guess, to be challenged in that way, so I could always be learning something new. So hopefully when the time comes in Pawnee for us to have that full-time language program, I'll be bringing a little more to the table, hopefully, at that time.
Excellent. You get teased a lot by Cheyenne and Arapahos for being Pawnee over there?
All the time. So for y'all listeners out there, the Pawnees and the Cheyennes and the Arapahos are historic enemy tribes. And so the reason I'm working over here, I actually live over here in Cheyenne Arapaho country, but my partner, she's Cheyenne and Arapaho. So I live over here with her people, and I just started working for her people maybe a couple months ago, helping out with their language program. But yeah, it's all in good fun. I get my jabs in there too.
Well, whenever Zach and I used to live with Zach and Brianna, his partner there, and we used to team up on her. We tease her because she was outnumbered by the Pawnees.
Yeah, it's funny because I think the first time I met one of Brianna's grandmas, she said, "Hey, Grandma, this is my partner here, and his name's Zach, and so." And oh, what tribe is he? She said, "Well, he's Pawnee." And she got real quiet there for a second, and it seemed like forever, first time meeting this lady. And she said, "Well, Pawnees and Cheyennes don't get along, right?" And that's all she said. And I just started laughing. But she really likes me now, so.
Man, I had an internship for IHS, and my supervisors were Ogallala and Northern Arapaho, and they would just give it to me all the time. But excellent. So now to end this on a positive note, starting with you again, Taylor, what do you imagine or hope for the future of the Pawnee language?
Well, like Zach said, we have a lot of ideas. We have a lot of experience now. So, I mean, the first one would be getting a language program, a full-time language program. Overall goal is to be able to work our way out of a job, if that makes sense, that we do such a great job that we can hear our language in everyday use again, that we don't have to teach anymore. We don't have to do this, and we can retire or whatever, go to the council and embezzle. No, I'm kidding. But that's what I see, is be able to hear my kids and grandkids, whatever, speaking our language and here in our community, not just even now, even our classes, we're able to create some more phrases that had kind of been lost or kind of dwindling. We're hearing them back again. And I don't want to say that's thanks to me and Zach, but that's more of a thanks to our class, our students, taking it upon themselves to speak the language when they can. And we try to tell them, even if you have to, what is that called? Code switching, like, going back and forth between Pawnee and English, that's fine. Just try to use it. And we're getting there. We're getting there. And I hope that we get there if we don't have to work anymore. So go ahead.
Good, man. I think what you guys are doing is really cool stuff. Like Carlton said, he's a nerd for etymology too. I find that stuff interesting, and then just going through and revitalizing a dying and dead language in a lot of ways is I don't know. It's admirable. Really cool. So great work. Good luck,
And what about you, Zach?
For me, yeah, like Taylor said, I think the goal is to work ourselves out of a job, and man, I'd love to just fish, honestly. I'd love to just be out in the woods around the pond fishing. But yeah, no, like I said, I work over here at the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes, and Taylor, at Oto, you have a staff of 7 or so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here, man, I get to work with these awesome people all the time, and I think we're like a staff of like 22 or something, and with their languages, I should say, Cheyenne and Arapaho, 2 separate languages, 2 separate cultures, one distinct political body, I guess you could say, one nation. So I get to see the wonderful things they're doing and all the work they're putting in. I'd love to bring that type of mentor apprentice program to Pawnee, to help us get to where Taylor was talking about, where, our folks are talking Pawnee and we're not needed anymore.
Good stuff. Well, if you guys ever want to do some fly fishing out in the Colorado Rockies, you always have a place to stay, and I'll take you to some spots out here.
Nice.
Oh, shoot.
It's funny. I will say this. I have a Dene family, and they came out and they're like, when are you going to learn? First they said, are you the linguist? And I was like, yeah. When are you going to learn Navajo? And I was like, well, let me work on Pawnee and Oto, because combined we have 5 maybe speakers, whereas Dene has 100,000. So maybe that will be my goal after we do Pawnee, is to learn Navajo. So we'll see.
Well, good stuff, fellas. Well, so before we end the show, Zach and Taylor, what are a couple of sources, these could be books, articles, videos, or whatever, that you would recommend for anyone interested in not only the Pawnee language, but in indigenous language reawakening?
Me go
Taylor.
first. Okay, I'll go first. Okay. Well, there's a couple, and Zach and I had put a list together, but we didn't combine our list. So whatever I'm leaving out, Zach, you add on to
I
it.
got you.
The first one, the one that when we went to that conference in 2013, they showed this documentary called "We Still Live Here," and it's Jessie Little Doe, and she, what is that, Wampanoag?
Wampanoag, I think.
Yeah, she. It's just a great documentary. It's an inspiring one. I recommend that one if you don't want to read and you want to watch something, go for that one. But going back to reading, there's one by Leanne Hinton. So it's funny how Zach and I, we would be reading about these people, and to actually see them and meet them, those were our rock stars, I guess, in our field. But Leanne Hinton's definitely one. She has one called Bring Our Languages Home, Language Revitalization for Families. And she also has the Green Book of Language Revitalization in Practice. And then Zach has quite a bit more, I think.
Yeah, I got a few more. If anyone listening is some language nerds like me. So the first one, I think it's called The Languages of Native North America by Marianne Methuen. It's kind of basically just an introduction to all the languages of Native North America. Couple more here. Volume 17, Handbook of North American Indians, edited by Ives Goddard. So a lot of good info about Native languages in general again. Volume 13, Parts 1 and 2 of a Handbook of North American Indians, edited by Raymond Damali and Douglas Parks. So it's kind of more about the plains, not just language, but culture, history, archaeology, a little bit of everything. That's a good one. In there, you could start learning a little bit more about Caddoan languages if you want to. I guess for anyone that's more interested kind of in just scientific knowledge for scientific knowledge's sake, good one is When Languages Die by K. David Harrison. When Languages Die. And then finally, I guess the last one I'd mention is maybe any of our relatives out there doing language revitalization work. I'd say The Language Warriors Manifesto by Anton Troyer. I think he's Ojibwe. That's a must read, I would say. I know it gave me that little recharge that I needed, man, especially after all this pandemic mess going on.
Well, good stuff. And we will have those in the show notes and the episode description wherever you are listening to this podcast.
Where could our listeners either find you guys on social media or find more about your classes or whatnot?
So me and Zach are pretty behind. We don't have I don't know if Zach, do you have an Instagram? I don't have it.
I don't have it.
I don't have Twitter. But we are on Facebook. So if you go on, you can find me and Zach, or our classes is Pâripakûru. It's just, that's how we say the Pawnee language in our language. Yeah. But that's our page. There's two of them. There's one as a page. We'll just leave that one. The other one's for our class only. But that's either way to reach out to me. Zach, I don't know if you had to add anything to that.
Just Facebook, man. That's all I got. If y'all want to hit me up on MySpace. No, I'm just no.
My Yahoo chat name is
Yeah, but Facebook, and then Pâripakûru is spelled Pari, and that's Pakuru, right, Duddy?
Pakuru, yeah.
Yeah, so that's how you would spell that.
Cool. Well, Connor's not here to ask this question, so I will try to ask it more succinctly than he does. If you... Oh, no, I see why he does it. I see why he messes up. Let's see. Thank you for joining us today, Zach and Taylor. If given the chance again, would you still choose to live a life in, I guess, linguistics?
Yes, I will. Definitely. I don't see myself doing anything else than language work.
Yeah, for sure, man. Same way. I don't see myself doing anything else. Love what I do.
I respect that. And you guys are clearly passionate about it too. So that's awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think that's it. Carlton?
Yeah, so we just interviewed Zach Rice and Taylor Moore. You can find them on Facebook at Pâripakûru. Yeah, so all their contact info will be in the episode description itself.
If you guys could please rate and review the podcast, especially on iTunes. If you could go on the Apple, whatever the podcast thing is, and just give it, you could just say, well, this was the worst podcast I ever heard. We've gotten that one before. You can just say that. It still helps our algorithm. So please do that. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to A Life in Ruins podcast.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Life in Ruins Podcast, and you can also email us at alifeinruinspodcast@gmail.com.
And remember, make sure to bring your archaeologists in from the cold and feed them beer.
What do you call Santa's little helpers?
What?
Subordinate clauses.
I like it. I like it.
That was the other one. Here we go. What was the vibe in the bar when the past, the present, and the future walked in?
Tense.
It was tense. Yeah.
I like it.
I was about to say, that's a good one.
Oh, I love it.
And with that, we are out.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.